The time is precisely 1:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Danishka Madhavala and read by Chandima Virakon. Headlines. All government schools in the Colombo and suburbs and all cities across the island will be closed next week. Indian Foreign Minister calls for unanimous support for Sri Lanka. International flights are scheduled to commence from the Palali International Airport on the 1st of the next month. The Water Board says supply will be disconnected if areas not settled. 41 Lankans return after illegal migration attempt to Australia. In news overseas, Apple Store workers vote to form first US union. In sports, the third ODI will be played today as a day and night encounter. Local stories in detail. The Ministry of Education has announced that all government schools in the Colombo and suburbs and all cities across the island will be closed next week from tomorrow. A decision has been made not to hold schools located in major cities in the Colombo region and adjoining cities of the Western Province and major cities in other provinces in the next week. Education officers in all provinces, including the Western Province, were authorized to take appropriate action with regard to schools located in non-major urban areas. A discussion was held yesterday under the patronage of the Minister of Education, Susil Premajayantha, to reach a final decision. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar yesterday chaired a parliamentary consultative committee meeting on the situation in Sri Lanka and said there was unanimous support on the need to stand with the neighbouring country in this difficult time. The Indian Foreign Minister said that he chaired a parliamentary consultative committee meeting on the situation in Sri Lanka. A good discussion held in a positive atmosphere on various issues and India's role, he said. Mr. Jaishankar added that unanimous support on the need to stand with our neighbour in this difficult time. Opposition leaders such as Shiv Sena's Priyanka Chaturvedi and DMK's Thiruchi Silva, among others, attended the meeting. International flights are scheduled to commence from the Palali International Airport on the 1st of next month. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Nimal Siripala de Silva, has informed officials of the Jaffna Airport and Airport and Aviation Authority Limited to facilitate the commencement of flights. The minister has informed officers to open dialogues with international carriers to facilitate flights to other countries other than India. The minister has informed the meeting that steps must be taken to develop facilities and establish a duty-free store at the premises promptly. It was mentioned that only flights carrying a maximum of 70 passengers is cleared to land at the airport. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with the local stories, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board has decided to disconnect water supply for all consumers who haven't settled their water bills for a certain period. It stated that the NWSDB has more than 7.5 billion rupees in arrears from its consumers for having carried out in uninterrupted water supply during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the NWSDB has given numerous chances to settle their dues. These payments will be subject to an additional 2.5% as surcharge. Every consumer can request for an installment payment from their respective regional offices to settle their overdue if they are finding it difficult to settle them at once. Nevertheless, after the disconnection, the total payment should be made in order to restore water supply. 41 Sri Lankans who attempted illegal migration to Australia but were intercepted by the Australian Coast Guard have been deported from Christmas Island. The group, including 35 adults and 6 children below the age of 16, revealed to be residents of Negombo, Mulaitiu, Chilau, Udapua, Thodua, Waba and Maravilla. The group were deported back to Sri Lanka from Christmas Island on a flight which included more than 100 Australian Forces personnel. The group were handed over to the Criminal Investigations Department at the Bandaranaike International Airport last night for further investigations. 37 individuals of the group were released on surety bail after being produced before Negombo Additional Magistrate Malan Jayasuriya. To conclude the local news, the headlines again. All government schools in the Colombo and suburbs and all cities across the island will be closed next week. Indian Foreign Minister calls for unanimous support for Sri Lanka. International flights are scheduled to commence from the Palali International Airport on the 1st of next month. The Water Board says supply will be disconnected if arrears not settled. 41 Lankans return after illegal migration attempt to Australia. That ends local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And on the main news story, the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Brazil, in collaboration with the Brazilian Association for Travel Agencies, organized an event to promote Sri Lanka as a destination for Brazilian and South American tourists on 9th June 2022 at the embassy premises in Brasilia. This is the first of its kind event organized by the embassy with the participation of a large number of travel industry representatives since the opening of the mission in 2002 in Brasilia. Ambassador Dasanayake appealed to the Brazilian tour operators to promote Sri Lanka as a destination amongst Brazilians and South Americans, stating that the number of tourist arrivals from the region were not satisfactory. That ends the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijasekara said the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Lanka IOC have suspended the permits of 3 fuel trucks with immediate effect. According to the minister, the permits were suspended pending investigations into 3 separate incidents reported on social media on illegal unloading of fuel. Several videos circulated on social media showed several buses illegally unloading fuel despite the ban on sale of fuel in cans, containers and bottles. That ends Watchlight. We move on to the world news next. The headlines. Apple Store workers vote to form first U.S. union. Zelensky visit frontline cities of Mykolaiv and Odessa. Fires burn through Shanghai chemical plant. Workers at an Apple store in Maryland have voted to unionize, forming the tech giant's first retail union in the United States. The employees of the shop in Townsend passed the measure 65-33 with about a dozen abstentions. It is the third Apple store to launch a union drive this year, but the first to successfully hold a vote. Other Apple stores in Atlanta and New York have also made moves towards unionization. Staff in Atlanta, however, have delayed their planned ballot with the union involved, the Communications Workers of America, alleging anti-union activity by the company. President Volodymyr Zelensky has made his first trip to Ukraine's war-torn southern front line as his forces mount a slow-moving advance in the region. Visiting the holdout city of Mykolaiv, he inspected damaged buildings and met soldiers, officials and health workers. The Ukrainian leader also visited the western city of Odessa, which has been subjected to periodic Russian shelling since the war began. Both cities are targeted in Russia's efforts to seize the Black Sea coast. Mr. Zelensky has regularly met with international leaders in Kyiv since Moscow pulled its forces away from the capital city, having decided to refocus its efforts on capturing the eastern Donbas region. But he has also defied Russian troops by going to areas where fighting has been raging and in recent weeks has visited other frontline cities including Kharkiv in the east. Fires at a large chemical plant in the Chinese city of Shanghai have killed at least one person. They broke out around 4 yesterday at one of the country's largest refining and petrochemical plants. Flames could be seen engulfing parts of the sprawling complex and spewing thick columns of black smoke into the sky. Shanghai is China's economic hub and only recently emerged from a strict pandemic lockdown lasting 2 months. The cause of fires, which affected an ethylene glycol facility, is still unclear. Sinopec, the state-owned company that operates the plant in the suburb of Jinshan, said the driver of the plant vehicle had been killed and a company employee had been injured. To end the world news, the headlines again. Apple Store workers vote to form first U.S. union. Zelensky visits frontline cities of Mykolaiv and Odessa. Fires burn through Shanghai chemical plant. That ends the world news. And over to the development news. According to UNCTAD's World Investment Report 2022 published recently, foreign direct investment flows to developing countries in Asia rose by 19% to an all-time high of $619 billion in 2021. This marked the third consecutive year that investment flows to the region grew despite the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to a 35% plunge in global FDI in 2020. Although the upward trend in 2021 was experienced across most sub-regions, South Asia was the only exception. Just 6 countries attracted more than 80% of FDI inflows. China was the main recipient, followed by Hong Kong, Singapore, India, the United Arab Emirates, and Indonesia. That ends development news.
Sports News is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
And on the sports news, it's cricket and tennis. The third ODI between Australia and Sri Lanka will be played in our Premadasa Stadium in Colombo this evening. The match is scheduled to start at 2:30 p.m. as a day and night encounter. The 5-match series at present locked at 1-1 as Australia won the first ODI and Sri Lanka won the second ODI. And in tennis, 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka has withdrawn from the Wimbledon with an Achilles injury. Japan's Osaka has not played since the French Open and recently posted a video of herself doing rehab on a treadmill. The 24-year-old previously said she was unsure if she would play Wimbledon because of its lack of ranking points. That ends sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
On business news, agreements including waiving patents for COVID vaccines and aiming to reduce overfishing have been passed by the World Trade Organization. The group of 164 countries spent 5 days negotiating deals which included pledges on health and food security. The partial intellectual property waiver deal for coronavirus jabs will allow developing countries to produce and export vaccines. but it will only last 5 years and excludes diseases, treatments and tests. That ends business news.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB You Trust.
Economic news, courtesy of
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
On economic news, a spokesman for the IMF mission in Sri Lanka said the International Monetary Fund team will visit Colombo from June 20th to 30th to continue discussions on an economic program that could be supported by an IMF lending arrangement, building on the progress made during the May 9th to 24th virtual mission. He said the IMF reaffirms its commitment to support Sri Lanka at this difficult time in line with the IMF's policies. The global lender has insisted that Sri Lanka should focus on debt restructuring and fiscal reforms prior to seeking a bailout program. That ends economic news.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
And finally, we take a look at the weather report. Several spells of showers will occur in western, Sabaragamuwa and northwestern provinces and in Kandy, Nura Eliya, Galle and Matara districts. A few showers may occur in northern province. Showers or thundershowers will occur at a few places in Uva and eastern provinces during the afternoon or at night. That ends the weather report. And to conclude this bulletin of news, the headlines again. All government schools in the Colombo and suburbs and all cities across the island will be closed next week. Indian Foreign Minister calls for unanimous support for Sri Lanka. International flights are scheduled to commence from the Palali International Airport on the 1st of next month. The Water Board says supply will be disconnected if arrears not settled. 41 Lankans return after illegal migration attempt to Australia. In news overseas, Apple Store workers vote to form first US union. In sports, the third ODI will be played today as a day and night encounter. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.